We're really pleased to have you and to host you all for this free webinar, NFTs, Friend or FOMO. I'm delighted to be hosting today. I have a few housekeeping items before we jump into the webinar. As I mentioned before, please take a minute and introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to meet you virtually that way. It's a great place also to contact Katie, my colleague. She's joining us to monitor any questions or technical issues that might arise. So if you have technical problems over the course of the presentation, just let her know in the chat and she'll do her best to troubleshoot. This webinar is being recorded. I want to repeat that. This webinar is being recorded. We're going to share the recording tomorrow after the presentation, and it will also be available on the Artwork Archive blog and on the Artwork Archive YouTube channel. So links to those two channels will be provided at the end of this presentation and also in the deck that you'll all be receiving via email tomorrow with the recording and with all of the links so that you can continue to educate yourself about NFTs. So you will receive these slides via email, as I mentioned, and just want to point out that we've left some time at the end of the presentation to answer any questions that you might have. So please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A below. If you are on an iPad or phone, you might have to access the Q&A by clicking on 3 dots. So feel free to do that, put your questions in there, and we'll get to those at the end of the webinar. So before we start, I would like to provide a brief overview of Artwork Archive if you're not familiar with us. If you already have an Artwork Archive account, thank you so much and welcome. Artwork Archive is an online art inventory management system based in Denver, Colorado. We work with artists, collectors, and collecting institutions all over the world to help them organize, manage, share, and showcase their art. My name is Emilie Trice. I'm Artwork Archive's editor. Joining me is Justin Anthony, Artwork Archive's intrepid co-founder. And as I mentioned, Katie Carey, our Chief Content Officer, is also here as well. So I believe that we will take a minute now to recap the poll. Katie, would you like to do that for me?
Sure, we got a few responses coming in, about 200 responses. It looks like about half of people are not at all familiar with the blockchain attending, which is great because this is a beginner's introduction to NFTs. And then another 43% are somewhat familiar. And there looks like there's about 2% of you who are very familiar. Then going on, we have the majority of y'all are painters. So we got 60% painters, 25% photographers, some sculptors and mixed media. And then we were trying to feel out how people's impression on NFTs were before this. So 34% of you have a positive view. 29% of you are skeptical. There's a 36% that are not sure, and 1% is negative. And we'll be Emilie and Justin will be going over kind of the positives and the drawbacks. So hopefully at the end of this, you'll have just more information about how you can view it. And then we have about a 50-50 split of if you're an Artwork Archive user or not. And we will be sending you some more information in the follow-up about what we do as well, so you can learn more.
Thank you so much, Katie. All right. So I think that I will end this poll, or Katie, maybe you can end that for us. I'm trying to figure out if we can turn on closed captioning from here. Live transcript. Katie, maybe you can look about that and see if it's possible.
Sure, closed captioning?
Mm-hmm.
I will look into it.
Okay, great. All right, so as I said, my name is Emilie Trice. I'm the editor of Artwork Archive, and my background is in commercial galleries such as Gagosian. I also managed galleries in New York, Berlin, and Aspen, Colorado. I've worked for tech startups, and I actually wrote the white paper for a blockchain startup several years ago. So I'm delighted to be here hosting this. And now I'm going to pass it over to Justin Anthony, Artwork Archive's co-founder, who will tell you a bit about himself and also read a few disclaimers.
Hi, as she said, I'm one of the co-founders of, excuse me, Artwork Archive. And Disclaimers are a big part of this. I don't want to say I was dragged kicking and screaming to this topic, but we definitely pay a ton of attention to what our audience asks for. And it was absolutely clear after our end of the year review webinar that this was a topic that so many people had questions about. And a lot of them were just very basic, not so much, really complicated questions. Really primarily focused on what the heck is this stuff and what does it mean to me? And then just a very heavy flow, at least for the last 6 months, of am I missing out on something? So we really wanted to put together something where we could go over the basics, give people a general understanding, address a lot of questions that we've had coming in, particularly over the last year-ish. But I do want to do some disclaimers before we jump into kind of the what's and the hows. So the first and possibly the most important one is to point out the fact that we are absolutely in the earliest stages of this whole crypto NFT world. I am a total nerd and I have been immersed into it for a long time and have understanding, I would say above average understanding of it. And still every day I'm surprised at how quickly things are emerging and how quickly things are changing. So, while this has been around for over a decade, crypto in general, and NFTs are just over 5 years old, to most of the world, they're brand new, and we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what is to come. Thus, it's possible that the information we're about to give you will be outdated within the week of the presentation. And I wish I was kidding on that, because even when we were doing the outline for this, there were some fundamental things that have changed just in the general world of the NFTs that caused us to have to even update and modernize this. The second disclaimer is that as a result of the statement above, we will be doing our best to update some of our NFT related resources over time and keep them current. We're going to try to keep this fairly high level, and we'll provide links to other sites for those looking to take a deeper dive. But we're also going to focus on specifically how NFTs relate to the art world rather than the broader applications. And believe me, those are endless. So summary, we're going to do our best to cover the basics, cover some of your questions, address some of the positives and some of the challenges, or some of the opportunities and some of the challenges, dispel some of the myths. Emilie came up with a clever title of Friend or FOMO, and I think it's it really speaks to the time, because so many people feel like it is the panacea and they may be missing something, and we're going to get into that as well. So Emilie, I'm going to go dark here, and you can start getting into some of the key terms to give everyone kind of like a basic familiarity.
So like almost all things, the crypto world and the NFT world has its own language. And some of the important terms to know before we get to like the meat and potatoes of this presentation are listed here. I'm just going to quickly read through them. So cryptography is the science of protecting information by transforming it into a secure format. The blockchain is an online record of transactions backed by cryptography. And you can think of this as a distributed ledger, where all the records of transactions are recorded and stored in many places at the same time. Data or information on the blockchain cannot be changed once it's recorded, and it's visible to all, so therefore transparent. Cryptocurrency is a medium of exchange that is digital, encrypted, and decentralized. Decentralized is an important word. And that is in contrast to fiat currency, which is currency that is backed by a government that issued it. So the US dollar, for example, is fiat. Smart contracts, that is a contract expressed in code that is designed to carry out a set of instructions automatically once pre-programmed conditions are met. If X, then Y. And wallet in crypto terminology is essentially where you store your private keys. That's like the key that you need to get into your various assets. It can be a passphrase or like a hash, a long string of numbers, and it keeps your crypto safe and accessible. They also allow you to send, receive, and spend cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum. And we'll touch on those more next. So I'm also going to now give you the academic definition of a non-fungible token, NFT. So this is from a peer-reviewed article published in 2021 in the journal Nature. It's about as high level academic as they come. And I think it does a good job of summarizing essentially what the NFT is, means, and does. So an NFT is a unit of data stored on a blockchain that certifies a digital asset to be unique and therefore not interchangeable, while offering a unique digital certificate of ownership for the NFT. More broadly, an NFT allows to establish the provenance of the assigned digital object, offering indisputable answers to such questions as who owns, previously owned, and created the NFT, as well as which of the many copies is the original. Originally, NFTs were part of the Ethereum blockchain, but increasingly more blockchains have implemented their own versions of NFTs. And now Justin is going to give you a bit more of a layman's explanation.
Right. So Emilie, with a great deal of experience with this and academic background on this front, who's been studying this, obviously is going to be peppering in a lot of these, technical breakdowns, but you'll notice that in everything on these slides, there's also links. So when we send this out, you guys will be able to click on links and kind of do a deeper dive. So, just to give kind of a more layman's definition of it, NFT stands for non-fungible token, and non-fungible just means it's unique and can't be replaced with something else. So here's a good example of kind of fungible versus non-fungible. $1 is fungible. So I can trade $1 for another and have the exact same thing. A one-of-a-kind painting like the Mona Lisa, however, is non-fungible. So trading that, that Mona Lisa for another painting would result in something totally different. So in the most simplistic terms, an NFT is just a unique digital representation of a good. And so what's so kind of interesting, different, like why is there so much hype? And that's really a complicated question with a wide range of answers. So we're going to fixate on, one of the more important aspects, and that is, in a digital world, all things can be copied. This is true with physical items as well, as forgery has long since, plagued the art industry. But NFTs may not stop the copying, and I'm sure you've heard, why don't I just right click and save this image myself? But NFTs provide an indisputable way to distinguish copies from the original and establish ownership.
And this is new for the digital world. So part of the reason this is such a big deal is that it enables digital artists to access a market. But I want to give you a brief history of where this came from. And as they say, timing isn't everything, it's the only thing. This is certainly true in like the NFT landscape. So the first NFT was technically created in 2014 by artist Kevin McCoy and tech entrepreneur Anil Dash. And this was part of the New Museum in New York's Incubator Hackathon 7x7. And literally nobody cared. But in 2018, Ethereum, which is a blockchain, developers announced the ERC 721 standard. And they said that this could be used to ascribe ownership to digital collectibles, as well as physical objects, even like a house. So the ERC 721 standard has become the standard for non-fungible tokens. But it wasn't until 2021 when Christie's sold a work by digital artist Beeple as an NFT for $69 million that we find ourselves in the FOMO that we're currently in. I do want to mention there is a great On the Media episode featuring Anil Dash where he talks about this, and there's a link provided here so you can listen to it later. I've also put together this short timeline because it's really interesting that actually all of this blockchain technology really stemmed from some advancements in the 1990s that had to do with timestamping of digital documents. So essentially 2 nerds on the East Coast of America figured out how to digitally timestamp a document, and that paved the way for Satoshi Nakamoto to publish his Bitcoin white paper. And this white paper, which essentially ushered in this new era of technology, was only 8 pages long. It had 1 page of citation, and more than half of those citations were for Stuart Haber and Scott Stornetta. So their discovery essentially gave us cryptocurrency and blockchain, which is attributed to Satoshi Nakamoto, who is still anonymous. We don't know if it's one guy or a collective. So it adds this whole sort of level of intrigue. 2014, as I mentioned, we have the first NFT. 2018, we have the ERC 721 standard. And 2021, Christie sells Beeple's NFT to a crypto billionaire, setting off the FOMO frenzy. So what do NFTs mean for artists?
So I'm going to jump into this. This is such a polarizing topic. We've gotten more comments and, polarizing emails on this, with people, talking about it being a Ponzi scheme to being, the next great thing. I want to go over some basic stuff on it first and talk through, once again, smart contracts. We're going to stay fairly high level here and provide some links. So this is kind of some of the positive things. And, Emilie, did you want to cover this slide, and then I will jump into the one directly following it?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, for digital artists, NFTs allow access to a new marketplace by creating digital scarcity and digital ownership. A lot of the artists who are finding success with NFTs previously were not able to sell their digital art in any meaningful way, leading many of them to have these sort of like day jobs, as animators or creative coders or creative technologists. So now they've been given entree to the art market in a very interesting way. For traditional artists, however, NFTs can either accentuate your revenue or they can distract from your core process and be costly. So winning and losing in the NFT space typically depends on how digitally savvy you are, what kind of art you make, and it usually correlates to an artist's pre-existing online following. So Beeple, the artist that Christie sold at auction for 69 million, had 2.5 million Instagram followers. But I think it's important to point out that he had never had an actual gallery show. And today, news broke that he's going to show with a gallery in New York. And surprisingly, he's going to exhibit paintings. So I think that that's pretty interesting. All right, Justin, back to you.
Okay, thank you for that save there. I had a rogue 3-year-old running through the office. Okay, so smart contracts. Let's talk about some of the opportunities. We didn't want to use the word pros and cons because we don't really have a horse in that race, but some of the opportunities. Smart contracts are really interesting. And, we got the definition of it before, and we have links for those wanting to do a deeper dive in a previous slide. But a smart contract is a digital contract written as a piece of code stored in the blockchain that automatically executes and blah, 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 blah. The bottom line is what makes these smart is the fact that all elements are carried out automatically and doesn't require a third party to make it happen. So what makes these different is the level of efficiency, security, and transparency that come with the fact that these reside on the blockchain. So what does that mean? As an artist, you can add your personal information establishing you as the creator, additional details and files and information on what should happen with any secondary sales. And this last part is one I want to make sure everyone understands because, in some countries this is the case, but it's certainly not the country or the case in the US and a number of other countries. This idea of participation in secondary revenue. So for Beeple's example, in one of the recent NFTs he sold, in his smart contract, it is written in there that any subsequent sale results in a payout to him as well. So meaning that initial originating artist has the ability to add to the contract the fact that any subsequent sale they can benefit from. So anybody who's ever, worked with a gallerist who has, sold their work, made them more popular, publicity hits, and then you're not able to benefit from that secondary sale or that, initial hype or the, significantly higher dollar value from that secondary market, that goes away with this because it's inherently built into the contract that you can create. The other thing is new outlets and access to a younger demographic. And, Emilie's going to be throwing out some stats to kind of articulate this a little better, but this is kind of both a blessing and a curse. So it seems that with every new day, a new platform boasting ease of use and increased exposure for artists comes out. And while that's great, many of you already have experience with online platforms, and you know just how hard it is to stand out. In this particular case, that challenge is even greater, and you have the added burden of all the tech hurdles that go with it. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a nerd and have been a crypto native computer person forever. And I still, when I'm into, getting into minting or consuming or creating a wallet, there is still a great deal of headache in kind of the current iteration of what's out there. So, the summary on this new outlets and access to a younger demographic is, depending on who you're targeting, access to a younger demographic may hold some appeal, as over 25% of the current NFT buyers are millennials, but that may not be your audience. So that may not apply to you. The other thing is new ways to express your creativity. And this, as looking through my collector lenses, has really been one of the most fascinating, because there's no question there's just tons of derivative junk and outright plagiarism out there, but it is truly amazing to see how much creativity has been unleashed as these digital formats have evolved. A lot of this has happened in the generative art world, and I think we'll cover that definition a bit, but we also have a link to it later on. For those unfamiliar with generative art, I would check out the platform Art Blocks, because it has a lot of interesting bits. There are just really interesting developments coming from those artists that are leaning entirely into platforms of art that fully embrace and incorporate the blockchain. And Emilie made the point previously that for a lot of digital artists, they weren't given a chance, they weren't given an opportunity. A lot of their success was derived from commercial success with digital design and graphic design, et cetera. So this has really proven to be an interesting avenue for a lot of them, and given a lot of validation to the art form. So jumping into challenges, this increased market saturation. I referenced this fact that many of you are familiar with online galleries. I mean, I'm not saying Etsy is an online gallery, but imagine trying to stand out in Etsy. And if you think that's hard, this NFT world makes that look like a joke. The sheer volume of NFTs that are coming out on a daily basis, it is so hard to filter quality from chaff, and it's so hard to stand out. Emilie mentioned the importance of social network and all these other things you have to bring to the table to stand out in this particular world. It is a little bit of a paradigm shift. It's a little different. This statistic on the right, OpenSea, one of the most popular NFT marketplaces in the space, has over 80 million NFTs on display. And we wrote this particular slide 2 weeks ago. My guess is that's probably nearing the 100 million mark right now. There's a lot of technological barriers of entry, and we'll get into a little bit of that as we get further down the rabbit hole in this presentation. And for a lot of people, this has just been a pretty big distraction to the main artistic practice. I can't tell you how many artists I've run into that saw the new shiny thing, ran toward it, and really spent a significant amount of time, money, and frustration that came with it, only to yield nothing. And I know much more of those stories than the successful creation of NFTs. What am I missing on this, Emilie?
I think you covered it, but let's show these interesting stats. And this will help to further dispel kind of some of the myths surrounding NFTs. So as we mentioned, 80 million NFTs and less than 1 million unique buyers. Only 10% of traders accounted for 85% of all NFT transactions. And this is again, according to that scientific journal Nature. Also, over 50% of NFTs sold are under $200. And to the right, you'll see we have a breakdown of the general value of NFTs that have sold. So,
and by the way, sorry to interrupt, Emilie, but super, once again, disclaimer, these stats were as of 2 weeks ago. So, we will continue to kind of update and evolve this stuff over time if there's a continued demand for the information. But I can't tell you how important it is to just let you know that this is the now. This is a snapshot So go ahead. Sorry, Emily.
All right. And so 80% of adults in the US still don't know what an NFT is. That's a huge percentage. Also, and this is very important. Right now, the average NFT has the same carbon footprint that would be generated by an average citizen of the European Union for 1 month. So this has to do with essentially the consensus protocols that are used within the blockchain to mine cryptocurrency. And this starts to get really sort of inside baseball. But essentially, this is changing, and hopefully the environmental impact will be lessened by changing to a different consensus protocol. And that's called proof of work, is the one that is being used right now. And they're trying to move to a proof of stake, which should use 99% less computational energy. So finally, and somehow it looks like my graph is gone away, but the value of Ethereum and other cryptocurrencies is incredibly volatile. We're talking like doubling and then halving within weeks, within 1 year. So all of these things are things to keep in mind before sort of succumbing to the FOMO of NFTs.
Yeah, and one quick note on the carbon footprint side. Ethereum, which, continues to be one of the dominant chains of record, that is the one that typically gets the bad rap for the environmental impact. There are a number of other platforms, which we will be covering a little bit later, very, very quickly, just so you know that they exist, some of which have, minimal to no impact whatsoever. So there are alternatives, but there are challenges with those alternatives, as the bulk of the dollars still does trade on that main Ethereum network. Okay.
So if you are an NFT curious artist, you should take a breath, take a moment, educate yourself. If it's something that you're interested in, it's a great time to get more informed. We've included some interesting people to follow on the final slide. We recommend that you be patient and focus on your art. Because the technology is developing at a frenetic pace, it's going to keep improving, technical barriers are going to come down, and in general, the marketplace will probably stabilize in the coming years and decades. So also, it's smart to join a community such as Discord. If you don't know what Discord is, this is a great place to educate yourself about NFTs. So just do a quick Google search and jump on a Discord channel. This will help you develop your network, because Discord and Twitter are actually where all the NFT collectors and many of the creators are gathering and sharing stories and talking about what's coming out new with this technology. So what do NFTs mean for collectors? Justin, I believe this is...
Yeah, so this really depends on what type of collector you are. I am personally a collector, so when this came out, it struck my interest as something new, something different, something to explore. It really depends on what type of collector you are and what drives you. So I'm going to make some generalizations here. I know a lot of you are not only artists yourselves, but also create. So, in a broad sense, NFTs have the potential to bring transparency to a world known to be opaque, and we're already seeing some of this. For those of you that purchase from an investment standpoint, NFTs are just like any other speculative asset, with the added benefit of having the provenance and attribution tracking built in. So there's no longer a need for a third party to verify the authenticity. But for those of you not interested or driven by the investment side of things, NFTs are typically purchased for one of three reasons. I'm going to go over 4 reasons, but here's the main 3. Cultural flex. So think of this as a way to demonstrate status. And I know this is going to seem strange or foreign to a lot of you, but there's a lot of people that buy things because they want to have something to impress others. You want something unique, scarce, or sought after. You want to be part of the cultural zeitgeist, and that NFT gives you the ability to display that. So a really great example of this is seeing things like a CryptoPunk, which is a very popular, NFT, or a Bored Ape or something, as your social avatar. It's a way to flex and show that, you're part of that club, or you had the ability to afford that, or right place, right time, etc. Membership. This is another thing that is really very, I can't say it's, there's not a lot of similar applications to this in the traditional art world, in that a lot of times NFTs have not only the added benefit of, enjoying that artwork, but it also provides you membership. So it gives you access to a resource, a club, a Discord channel, future releases, or anything else that's tied to the benefit of owning that NFT. And this reason may be less common now, but you're going to see a lot more of this in the future as artists get more creative. Recently, one of the NFTs I happened to purchase, it was an artist I knew. I wanted to support what they were doing. And by me owning that particular NFT, I get to watch how that particular NFT evolves in their artistic world. So I get to see that, it gives me access to seeing that stuff in advance. The last one is something we all can relate to, which is patronage. For me personally, this is by far and away the most important and hopefully the most common driver. You buy the works you love from the artists you want to support. And that also happens to be the advice I give my friends when they're asking about a particular NFT or NFT related project. The vast majority, I'm going to make something. And as I said, this is not the opinion of Artwork Archive. This is the opinion of Justin. The vast majority of NFTs that are minted, I believe, will never have any secondary value. So when you're making those decisions as to whether you're going to buy, collect, support that particular thing, make sure it's a decision that you're doing for reasons that mean something to you. The last one is the speculative investment, the money grab. People talk about this as a Ponzi scheme, and just, there's so much negative feedback. There's so many fakes, phonies. The speed at which people can exploit money from others, has never been at this pace. And many people investing, due to belief that they could flip for a profit, chandelier bidding or market manipulation, like this is happening, and there's little recourse to prevent that right now. So quick cautionary tips, watch out for things like wash trading. For those of you who don't know what wash trading is, it's, transactions where the seller is on both sides of the trade. And by the way, this goes on in the traditional art world all the time, with auctioneers bidding up things, or gallerists, conspiring to, bid something up going into a major auction. So it's not like this is new or unique to NFTs. If you want to see a good example of this, see the recent one from Melania Trump. What else? I think that's pretty much it. They're in essence a speculative investment class, if you're looking at it that way, in a market that can very easily be manipulated. So what is next? How to buy NFTs. Okay, so we're gonna refer you to some articles on this, because this would take up the lion's share of this presentation. What we used here is we tried to find some largely unbiased resources that would not, that didn't have any gotchas or traps in that. So on the left side of this particular slide, you'll see some of the major blockchains and cryptocurrencies associated. We've talked a lot about Ethereum. Tezos is a great example of, kind of a newer platform that is gaining a lot of momentum, largely because it's got some, ease of use and speed benefits, but it also has almost a zero footprint when it comes to environmental related things. So you see a lot of artists starting to experiment with that. These other ones, I'm not saying familiarize yourself with all of them, because it will just be brain overload. For those interested in purchasing NFTs or the NFT curious, you see the marketplaces. OpenSea is the 800-pound gorilla in the space. Super Rare has been around for a long time. Rareable, Foundation is, this artist list by invite only. A lot of these marketplaces are just total, similar to an Etsy, where, there is no pre-qualification. Anybody can be on them, anybody can list on them, and there's no real heavy curation. For those of you who are really kind of looking to find something that suits you, when you're doing research, you'll quickly find that are some that really cater to your taste or specific artists or specific types of art. And I encourage you to look out for them. Sources on how to buy an NFT, just click these links when we send out this and read up on it, because Us telling you how to buy an NFT today is so dependent on your preference, your currency of origin, what you're interested in, what NFT marketplace you're going to go on. In general, all of those marketplaces we listed have a how-to on them for those of you who are interested, but make sure you read everything before doing things, because in addition to the cost of the artwork, the equivalent to shipping, this is a bad analogy, so I know I'm going to get some feedback on this, but I'm going to make perhaps an unfair analogy. But the analogy to shipping in the digital world or in the NFT world is called gas fees. And gas fees are essentially what the transaction fees you pay to make these things move from one wallet to another. And I'm trying not to get into any weeds here. Summary, click on some of these links. They do a really good job of kind of giving you an idea of how to buy them yourself. What's the next one? How to create NFTs. Okay, same story here. This is one of those things where how I would tell you how to mint an NFT on one platform is completely different than the other. And as we said in the beginning, this is going to change so dramatically. So let me make two major statements on both the buying and selling side. There are at least 4 major platforms that exist right now that are currently working on how to make it as easy as swiping your credit card or hooking up your bank account to jump right in without you having to have a wallet. They do everything on the back end. They're trying to make it as transparent as possible, but also as frictionless as possible. And those are, if I look at what I believe to be the biggest innovations that are going to come out in the NFT space within the next 6 months to a year, you will see a number of platforms emerging. Even OpenSea is racing to try to do this right now. Coinbase, one of the biggest kind of custodial services, is working to come up with a way that if you know how to spend on your credit card, you can buy an NFT. If you know how, and similarly to the creation side. I see a lot of people, and we're going to get to questions quickly, I hope. I see a lot of people asking about cross-platform compatibility. This is another major innovation we should see. Right now, many of the NFTs exist on a single platform and are not cross-platform compatible. So when you hear all this talk about Web3 and the metaverse, and you see all of these brands like Adidas and Gucci and all these artist collaborations happening, a lot of that is very specific to a single blockchain. And they're working very hard on making those assets, those artworks, those things portable as you move from one chain to another. Cross-chain compatibility is something that is probably one of the hardest nuts to crack, and something that people are working the hardest on. I keep reiterating this. I've just had tons of artist friends mint on non-Ethereum based chains. And a lot of the struggle they have is it's harder to get noticed there when most of the money is trading on the Ethereum blockchain. That may change within a very short period of time. If you get cross compatibility across platforms, that is going to dramatically impact things, because then it won't matter as much. And I'm really trying to avoid getting the weeds. I can't recommend highly enough clicking on the links that Emilie has thoughtfully put together on this, because they do go much more into depth, and we'll cover a lot of these questions. And Emilie, I'll pass it back to you for the trends.
So yeah, the NFT art market differs from the traditional art market in a few ways, some more significant than others. There is a lot of emphasis on collections. So essentially, instead of creating a series, you create a collection of 50 NFTs that are all sort of like under the same umbrella, but are all a little unique. And to make those unique, NFT creators and artists have implemented attributes, and attributes are also a way to either validate the scarcity of an NFT or not. So if somebody buys an NFT that is being minted at the time of sale, and they're not even sure exactly what they're getting, but they know it's going to have one of several attributes, if they get an attribute that is highly rare and scarce, then of course that will affect the value of that NFT and make it more valuable. So generative art pieces typically fall in this category. And it can be kind of addictive if you're trying to get a certain kind of NFT, say like a .movie file, but you end up with a JPEG, which maybe happened to me. But it's just a way for you to sort of understand how rare is my NFT in relation to the rest of the collection and to the rest of the 80 million NFTs on whatever marketplace. There are some certain animation trends that you will see in NFTs, probably the most sort of ubiquitous being the endless or infinite loop. So things spinning around forever. This seems to be an important part of the NFT aesthetic. In order to create a market demand, NFTs are generally sold in timed drops and live auctions. And so that's, essentially a way to sort of like create as much demand as quickly as possible, and also to increase the FOMO of people sort of watching and collecting. It's definitely a market strategy that the art world has also employed, since its genesis. But unlike the art world, the NFT community, as I mentioned, is mostly on Twitter and Discord. Instagram is an important sort of barometer for the NFT world, but you'll see a lot of exchange happening in these other sort of forums that are a little nerdier and a little less mainstream. And Discord is definitely the most important one. Almost every major NFT marketplace is going to have its own Discord channel. Art Blocks, the generative art platform, they have their own Discord channel. And this is a really great place to meet other people and sort of get involved. So finally, for better or worse, many of the most successful NFT artists already have tens of thousands of social media followers. I have a quote on the right-hand side here that was translated from German, and this is from the critic and writer Anneke Meyer. And she says, if you click through the drops on Nifty Gateway, quickly becomes clear that the artists here are obviously selected based on their number of followers. So we're talking 59,000, 98,000, 254,000, 1.2 million followers. If you do not have a large Instagram following, but you want to get more involved in this space, it might be recommended to put some more resources into growing your Instagram and online following. So when you all receive the copy of this deck, you will have slides here to all of these people. We have some tech entrepreneurs listed here who are definite thought leaders in the NFT space. Johann Koenig is a gallerist from Germany. He has galleries in Berlin, London, Tokyo, Seoul, and Vienna, I believe. He's also started his own NFT marketplace, and he recently sold an NFT by the artist Refik Anadol, who's Turkish, based in Los Angeles, for $1 million. So we also have some early gallery protagonists in the NFT space. Casey Rees, who's an academic. He founded Processing, which is a kind of creative coding. And then, sort of traditional collectors like Adam Lindenman, who is now selling NFTs through his gallery, Venus Over Manhattan, as well as Amy Whitaker, who's a professor at NYU and has written extensively on this topic, as well as blockchain, plus G Money, who's an influencer, and some other interesting people to follow. And with that, I will let Justin summarize, and then we will take as many questions as we can in the remaining.
I feel like, this is a bit of a goat rodeo, no matter how we would like to kind of consolidate things and demystify this. If there's two takeaways I hope everyone gets from this, is a slightly better understanding of the basics, which will certainly be delivered, if you have the presentation sent to you. And then the second part of it is just the realization that this is not the panacea. This is not the silver bullet. This is not the thing that will change your life. Just like when Instagram came out, we got this endless flood of people coming in asking, how can we take advantage of this? Am I missing out? Is my career over if I don't, figure out how to be the best or gain followers, etc. There's always going to be something new coming out. And this is just yet another platform, yet another outlet, yet another opportunity. I promise I'll stop disclaiming after this, but we don't endorse any of the people you see on this list. We thought that would be helpful for your own research purposes. We don't have partnerships or affiliations with any of the links that we share in there, and we will make sure to include those. We just want to make sure you are armed with all the information. One quick thing that's really important for those of you who have been putting a lot of questions in the chat, please make sure those go into the Q&A if you want to get answers to them. That's going to be the thing that informs our upcoming posts on this. That's going to be the things that we're going to try to get back to, either individuals on, and we will do our best. Obviously, we can't cover them all, but it'll definitely help us see the themes that are emerging. I've seen a ton of people asking about how to tie an NFT to a physical work of art, which is just a whole rabbit hole in and of itself. The summary is there's a lot of institutions and upcoming companies that exist to do nothing but that. But I wouldn't say there's a de facto leader in that space or anything at this point. So that's, a lot of these topics are evolving, and we'll get back to you. Emilie, what are some of the other, I saw one that came in about the platforms in general. There are definitely some ways that you can display your NFT across multiple platforms for sale, but those are the sales platforms. When it comes to the platform you minted it on, whether it's Ethereum or Flow or Tez or one of the others, that's a little different. So there's a differentiation between those two things. And my answer there probably just muddied that water more than it helped. What are some of the things you're seeing, Emilie, so we can try to...
So do you think the NFT bubble will burst like tulip mania? I think that's a good question.
That is a great question. I don't know. Every time I've tried to speculate on this type of thing, or every time I thought something wouldn't work, and think of back in the day, someone says to you, hey, I am going to have a person that you've never met show up with a car that you don't know, and you're going to get into it and take a ride. Like, that seems like an awfully crazy idea for me. And yet Uber and Lyft are all around the world. Similarly, on the Airbnb front, when I heard that idea, I'm going to go stay in someone's, other bedroom. That's actually, a lot of these concepts seem really foreign. So a lot of the NFT stuff, I think we're early innings. I think things are emerging so fast. I will give you my own personal opinion. I think the technology is fascinating. I think it opens up a ton of doors. I think it is here to stay, and we will start to see NFTs permeating through far more aspects of our life than just the art world. But like anything new, Emilie gave the best advice ever. Learn, familiarize yourself, determine whether it's a good fit for you, and be patient, because it's not going anywhere in the near future. I told you my opinion from a collector that buy based on something you love, not from a speculative standpoint, because if you are trying to use this as a speculative asset, I believe the risks far outweigh the gains, because 99% of the things that exist out here in the NFT world are going to be worthless. What's next?
How does NFT affect copyright and reproductions? From John Gibbs.
That's interesting. That's a really good question. So, for those of you familiar with copyright law, there's a lot of things that inherently give you protection, like first in print or first in visibility. One of the interesting things NFTs do, because of the smart contract, is it allows you to do the attribution and establish authenticity and your kind of authorship to it more easily. So I think what we will see in copyright suits and things like that is you'll have a little more teeth, because it is so easy to establish ownership and creation as you're dealing with something that inherently is transparent and distributed across the general distributed ledger that everyone has access to. The other side of that, though, is if you look at what's happening right now, if you Google any NFT copyright infringement or NFT copies, you are going to have your mind blown by just how many things are being knocked off and how quickly it's being done. So, this is just like things get copied in the real world with, Disney logos and things like that. It's just easier and quicker to do it. It's when it comes to the enforcement, though, and things like that, you have a little more teeth in that it's much easier to establish you were the originator.
So Dolce Gross has made an NFT, but is waiting for the right time to essentially list it, and is wondering if they would have to pay a gas fee before it can be available to a marketplace.
Sure, that depends on the platform. And that's another one of those kind of confusing questions. Some have gasless minting where you can, or gasless listing, where you can list your NFT and it will only have a gas fee settle at the time of minting. So when that first purchase is made. And once again, consult with the platform you're looking at, because a lot of them are trying to make it so that you don't have to have gas fees associated. For those of you who just want to experiment, I have a lot of friends that just weren't interested in paying the gas fees associated with Ethereum, how much they fluctuate, how much, because the cost, at the last time I tried, it was $175 just to mint, a very small entry, not even a series. But there are other platforms that are much more friendly and easier to quickly mint. The downside there, though, is the technical barriers that come with having to get a Tezos wallet or finding out how to buy Tezos or the other. Ethereum tends to be more mainstream, so that is the go-to. Sorry, there's a lot of people asking about gas fees. We'll put the definition of it when we send this out, but I made a terrible analogy that I'm sure I'll catch flack for, but shipping in the traditional art world is similar to gas fees in the NFT world. It's a bad comparison, but it gets across the main message. When you are, creating, minting, when you are buying, so if I'm buying something, an NFT, I am paying a gas fee to have that transferred to me. And that gas fee is basically the digital shipping cost, if you will. So the more busy the network is, the more crowded it is, more transactions that are going through the pipe, the higher that gas fee is, which is why so many people, there is a site called the Internet Gas Station that you can go and look at the gas fees at any given time when you're deciding, what is the best time of day to mint something for purchase.
So how does an artist protect themselves legally?
I don't know if I'm qualified to ask that. If I put something out there in the NFT world, I'm doing my best to be as verbose and detailed in the creation documentation, to have as much link backs to me, details, personally identifiable, obviously not, overly personally identifiable information, but to make sure that I'm establishing that authenticity, because it makes it easier. But this is one thing, when people talk about trademarks, when people talk about copyrights, one thing you can't ever forget is you still have to pursue it. You still have to be the one to enforce it. You still have to be, and copywriting and trademarking and even authenticity with NFTs may give you a greater leg to stand on, but at the end of the day, if someone knocks off Artwork Archive's logo tomorrow and starts saying that they're Artwork Archives and are using all of our asset, we as a company still have to pursue them legally and exhaust a heck of amount of energy and money and stuff like that to enforce such a thing. So it's difficult. Just because something is protected doesn't mean there isn't some nefarious person out there who isn't willing to still take advantage of it. And the current state of NFTs is a perfect example of this right now, because the second when Cyberpunks went viral, there was, 30 other versions of it instantly.
Interesting. So let's see. Vladin has an interesting suggestion that Artwork Archive could allow collectors to mint an artist's work directly from Artwork Archive through a smart contract. This would allow art to be made available for minting without having to mint all editions from the beginning. That's a good point, but it should really be the artist's decision if they want to tokenize their art as an NFT. And, just to be crystal clear, an NFT doesn't necessarily have to be attached to a digital artwork. It can also be attached to a physical object. But, for the sake of this presentation, we wanted to focus on kind of like the most universal use case at the moment. And that would be a more digitally based medium.
I just saw a question come in. It was coming in the chat, and like I said, I encourage everyone to put things into the Q&A section so we can view them later. But what makes an NFT valuable? What makes an NFT more valuable than another? That is a total, it depends. It is kind of like asking what makes an individual artwork valuable. What is interesting to me might not be interesting to one of my colleagues. Like we very often, well, obviously we have the good fortune of seeing amazing art every day, and consider ourselves very lucky, and we'll often compare like, hey, I just saw this, what do you think of this? And all of us have our own taste. It's very similar in the NFT space. What makes an NFT valuable? If you mean monetarily valuable, a lot of it is speculation. Emilie mentioned before how important it is to like build up your network and follower count and things like that. And when there is a perception that something is being backed by an influencer or incredibly scarce, or you hear Adidas is about to do, or another major brand is about to do a project with them, there is this, I don't want to say gross, but I'm going to say gross. There is this gross commercialization and monetization of all things in this world. And it's really not unique to NFTs though. A lot of what drives, dominant sales in the art market is someone who is looked at to be an influencer or an expert in the field saying this thing is valuable. And it's very true as well in the NFT world. Most of the NFTs I bought just because I really loved the artist and wanted to support their product or project.
So Judy Berlinger wants to know, what do you actually own when you buy an NFT?
So what do you actually, I mean, it depends on what that NFT was associated with. So NFTs just means like it is this non-fungible token. It is the token. So, Emilie talked about how this is, can be associated with a physical good. I do believe within short order, you will see physical goods having an accompanying NFT along with them that transfers with the asset. Once again, I'm going to make a terrible analogy that I'm sure I'll get flack for, but if you purchase a home, there is a title associated with that home. So the title is a physical document. So when you're purchasing a home, the title comes along with that document as proof of ownership. And many of you who've purchased a home have had to do title search or title research, or there are title companies out there, which is a third-party verification. You can almost think of an NFT to a certain degree as a certificate of authenticity that doesn't require a third-party appraiser. So if I buy a piece of physical artwork right now, and let's say it's a masterwork, my expectation is there's appraisers that have looked at it, there's authenticity that's been established, and the difference is that's a bunch of people's opinions and they happen to be experts, and that's how the artwork is operated forever. In the NFT world, because of smart contracts and because of how NFTs exist, that authentication and establishment of creation and ownership is fully transparent and impossible to falsify. So that verification process is able to occur without a third party. And that's one of the interesting things. And Artwork Archive, I can speak as a company, we're not pro or con NFT. We're pro doing what we can to educate our audience on a topic that clearly has a lot of people talking and clearly has had, we've had thousands of people asking for some additional information. And that's why we did it. We don't have a horse in the race. We don't have, a pro or con stance on it. We're hopefully this was beneficial to the majority of you.
So I did see one more kind of really important point before we sign off. And I would just like to mention that, similar to the art world, which we're all involved in and which we probably all love and maybe hate sometimes, it's natural to have conflicting emotions about this new technology, this new marketplace, this new community, this new everything. Originally blockchain was meant as like a utopian ideal that would allow people to transact without government control. And what we're seeing in the Ukraine right now is an example of that. A member of the Russian artist protest collective Pussy Riot named Nadia Tolenkonikova has raised $6 million for the Ukraine through an NFT. I also read that, Ukraine's crypto wallet has gained $33 million in donations. So it's not all bad, but there are things to be aware of and challenges that persist. And we look forward to experiencing the future of NFTs with all of you. And just want to say thank you so much again for joining us.
Yeah, really, thank you. And we really hope this was helpful. For those of you that feel a particular subject wasn't covered adequately, or you have additional questions, please put them in the Q&A. The team will be going through the Q&A over the next few days. It's going to help inform a lot of the things we're putting together content-wise in the near future. And as always, if you have other topics or other things you're interested in, feel free to let us know about that as well, because we are entirely driven by those inquiries. Thanks, and have a great day. Thanks for taking the time and getting through this with us. It's a brave new world that is constantly evolving.
Thanks, everyone. Wishing you a great rest of your day. And yeah, signing off here from Artwork Archive in Denver, Colorado.